The following story that you're about to hear is based on real facts. In order to keep the anonymity of those who are involved, the names of the characters and some details have been changed. It's the sad truth that even though we're midway through the 21st century, there are still people out there that consider themselves superior over others due to their job status. It's bad enough to link one's career to their values, but it's worse to completely disregard their way of life and feeling because of it. Due to this, most people that consider themselves to be of high social standing end up not seeing the real value of the people that struggle on the daily. The quote from Anthony De Saint-Exupery's novel, The Little Prince, explains it the best. The essential is invisible to the naked eye. As always, don't forget to leave a like on this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already. Make sure to press that bell notification button as well in order to ensure that you never miss a single one of our uploads. So, without further ado, let's dive into the story. Today's story is going to be a testament of those who judge others based on how they look and their career. Being born to a middle-class family, Veronica had the opportunity to attend the best schools ever since she was young. Veronica is the only child of Mrs. Altamira. Even if her mother rushed her to always be punctual, it all fell on deaf ears as she would always arrive a little bit late to college. The mother even waited for her by the entrance of her home and took her all the way to the bus stop. Even if she was a young girl who had nothing but luxury since she was born, she always had a tendency to be nice to regardless of how economically inferior they were to her, or so her mother claims. One day, as Veronica was leaving for school with her mother towards the bus stop, she ends up meeting a man who was cleaning somewhere nearby. Upon closer inspection, he was somewhere around the same age as her. She walked up to him and simply asked him, "Hello, what's your name? Do you live nearby?" Out of nowhere, her mother intervened, and with not a droplet of shame in her voice, she cut the conversation saying, "My child, what are you doing talking to this kind of people? Get away from him. He doesn't want to talk to you. Please, you're going to be late." Veronica was ashamed of her mother's outburst. She said goodbye to the young man and apologized profusely for her mother's outburst. She then left for her classes, sad that her morning started with such an event. A few days went by as Veronica attended college as she normally does. She was spending time in her college cafeteria having her breakfast with some friends when, out of nowhere, a student approached their table and asked if he could sit down with them. She took one look at the stranger and her eyes widened in surprise. The young man just smiled back at her when the table questioned whether they knew him. However, as the eyes of Veronica and the young man met, it was clear that they recalled each other. The young man chuckled as he simply said, "Ha, you're the girl with the grumpy mother. Last Friday you asked me 2 questions, which I couldn't answer because your mother barely allowed you to approach me." Embarrassed by the recollection, Veronica looked to the ground and felt shame. "I'm really sorry for what happened," Veronica said sincerely before the surprise hit her again. "Oh my God, this cannot be a coincidence. What are you doing in the college?" The young man eagerly answered Veronica, "I study civil engineering. I'm already in my 4th year." After the young man sat down at the table and they conversed, Veronica noticed that he was a good guy. As time passed, he wanted to know as much as he could about her, and she was more than happy to tell him everything. Bit by bit, she ended up talking about how things were at home, what she did for a living, and many other things. They almost instantly connected. As the days went by, Veronica and this young man made as much time for each other as they could, as they met almost frequently and became so close. However, they were so caught in the moment that it took them a few days to realize that they both didn't know each other's names yet. One day, Veronica realized that she didn't know this interesting young man's name yet, and she inquired him. "Oh, I'm so sorry, what a mess I am. My name is Harold, and I live close to our college," he sheepishly replied as she invites her to pay him a visit when she could. They talked for so long that they forgot that time passed. This cost them both a warning from their teachers as they were late for class. However, it really didn't bother them because they were clearly only thinking about each other. At the end of class, Veronica returns home in a very happy mood to her mother's surprise. Mrs. Altamira asks her the reason behind her good mood, when Veronica couldn't hold in her excitement anymore. She gushed about how much she liked this young man that she met, and how she was so happy that she received an invitation from him to go to a small cafe that was down the street. The mother was filled with curiosity as she asked Veronica of the last name of this young man, in the hopes of figuring out if the young man hailed from a rich family or one of her friends' families. After all, the mother was proud of the fact that Veronica was sent to a notoriously good university. Her imagination flew at the thought of all the options her beautiful daughter would have at such a university, as her expectations rose for a second. However, Veronica simply shook her head at this question, sighing as she spoke. I really don't know, Mother. What I do know is that he is a good guy, really handsome, honest, hardworking. He loves to talk to me and respects me. Her mother was shocked at what she just heard as she tried to object, but to no avail. Veronica did not pay any heed to her objections, because Veronica's whole world ended up being Harold. A few days pass as Harold and Veronica keep in touch. They spend time with each other at college on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Harold excitedly wanted to invite Veronica for dinner once more, but this time he wanted to learn more about her and her family, as he decided to invite Veronica's mother as well. Harold didn't spend a single expense when it came to arranging the dinner. He wore the best suit that he owned, as he wanted to make the night special for both Veronica and Mrs. Altamira. Noticing all the effort that Harold had made, Veronica was taken by surprise. Veronica was very impressed at how handsome he looked and how well-mannered he conducted himself throughout the dinner. Veronica wasn't the only one that was impressed, however, as her mother was also impressed at how well-mannered the boy was. Mrs. Altamira's mind immediately thought that such a well-mannered boy definitely had to be part of a good family. While Veronica's mother was off in her own dream world, Veronica and Harold couldn't stop staring at each other at how well things were going, and how her very insistent mother was finally showing some acceptance from her end. The dinner ended off pretty well as each party went home afterwards in good spirits. However, things take a turn on the very next day. As Veronica stepped out of her house in order to head for college, she sees Harold in front of her house, dressed in his work clothes. She immediately walks up to him and greets him with a kiss on the cheek and a hug. However, Mrs. Altamira had a very different reaction altogether, as she noticed that he was a simple street sweeper. Veronica's mother immediately started screaming at the supposed sweet sweeper with rude words, as she couldn't wrap her head around why Veronica has such a relationship with someone that was low class as him. The two lovers broke off as Harold tried to calm Mrs. Altamira down. He took off his cap as Mrs. Altamira was taken by surprise. She went completely pale as she shakily asked him if he was really Harold. Harold immediately answered her question with a simple, "Yes, ma'am." Mrs. Altamira was enraged. She went into a state of denial. "Can't believe it! How can such a sweet streeper attend a college? And more than anything, go to such a fancy restaurant with guests?" As sad as the thought was, Harold was used to this kind of treatment, as he learned many years ago on how to deal with people who underestimate or think lowly of his job. He calmly answered Veronica's mother, "Ma'am, we can't spite people for the job they are taking part in. All of us are important to society in our own ways. Because of jobs like mine, the city enjoys a healthy environment. You don't have the right to be rude to someone for their economic status or their job they are a part of, because behind every work uniform, there is a person with feelings, values, and dreams." Mrs. Altamira was taken aback by the answer. She suddenly started feeling uncomfortable. She immediately turned her back to Harold as she started to slowly walk back home. Veronica didn't give up, however, as she followed her mother all the way back home and tried to make her see how wonderful of a man Harold was and all the good work he had done. However, all her words fell on deaf ears. Falling into despair, Veronica snaps as she finally speaks her mind. "Mother, since I was young, you have been trying to teach me inadequate values. I'm almost a woman, but you still treat me like a child, and you want to control me every step of the way. But that is going to happen. Mother, it's time for you to realize that someone's value is not related to where they stand socially or economically. Respect and dignity are values that we deserve, because at the end of the day, we're all human. The fact is that we were born in a favorable condition that let us study where we want and live in luxury. However, none of that gives us any right to treat those who are in a less favorable condition any different. We are all in the same rights. What makes us human is our ability to empathy for someone in a more vulnerable state than us. That empathy with someone else is the greatest treasure of a human being with good values. Suddenly, something unexpected happened. Mrs. Altamira broke down. She couldn't hold back her tears. The shame rose in her as she looked at her daughter as her breaths grew heavy. The fact that Veronica had been carrying all those feelings inside her without ever letting it out for all these years finally reached her. Mrs. Altamira was heartbroken as she immediately apologized. "I want you to forgive me for my attitude. What happened today has made me reflect on everything I believed in, and you're right. I'm really sorry for what happened with Harold and with all the people I've mistreated in all of my years. I promise that it will not happen again. I want to fix things. I want to invite that young man to a dinner, because we owe him one, right?" Veronica was very emotional at her mother's self-reflection and acceptance, as all she could do was happily nod. Later on that day, Harold received an invitation to Mrs. Altamira's house, where she profusely apologized for her behavior earlier that day. That very same day, Veronica and Harold's romance became official, with the blessing of Mrs. Altamira. We've reached the end of our story. This story is a testament to the fact that we're all humans at the end of the day, and nobody should be judged for the work they do. Treating someone differently for something as simple as class differences means that you've got a lot to reflect on, and the value that we find within the souls of others reflects upon the humanity in our hearts more than anything. We hope this story inspired you in a positive way. So, do you think Mrs. Altamira is a good mother? Do you know anyone who acts like Mrs. Altamira used to? Let us know in the comments down below. And as always, if you like this story, be sure to like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more stories like this. Make sure that you share this with your friends as well. And thank you very much for watching. We'll see you in the next video.